everybody, welcome to Lighting Design for Video Production. So today we're going to look at some of the technology and equipment that's available through the Creator Space and how we can start using that equipment to create lighting design. Now lighting design is really important because for any kind of video production, you can just put lights up or you can start to think about lighting design. So any place you go to, if we start to explore a space in terms of how light reacts to the space, how it interacts with the people in the space or objects in the space, that's really crucial to starting to understand lighting design. And sometimes when you look at a space and you go, wow, that looks really beautiful. I like how the sunlight is hitting something. This is the whole point of that is a lighting design. But now, as video artists, digital video artists, we can create those kinds of lighting designs in any kind of space. And this is what we're going to look at today. So again, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. So I just want to thank all our partners in this project. So we have all our library partners, Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, and the Wasaga Beach Public Library. And the main partner in this, we have our Canada Council for the Arts. So we thank everyone for helping us bring this project to you so you can access the digital arts through our library partners. So the exciting thing is the LED lights I'm going to demo and we're going to talk about today. These are pieces of equipment that you can take out as technology loans through our library partners. So what does that mean? That means you can just go with a library card, take out the LED lights, and one of the panels that I'll be demoing with this particular LED light right here, this type, these are available. We have 3 or 4 of them in each library, so you can do this, recreate some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. And the great thing is they're also battery powered. So you can just take these, on location somewhere or not even worry about if there's power. So super portable, very bright, great looking lights, and we can adjust color temperature as well. So we're going to talk about all these topics today and get into some lighting design. Just want to remind everyone that you can access the video equipment. So we have the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K kits that you can get from the Blue Mountains Public Library and the Wasaga Beach Public Library. You just need to go on our website, tvmcs.ca, to do the proficiency test. And once you go through that and you pass, you have access to that equipment. The lighting you can just access. We have tripods, lighting. There's some sound equipment and also a photography camera, and those also require proficiency tests. But there's a lot of equipment, including a 360 video camera that you can access as well. So let's continue. Let's get right into the lighting design. What does it mean? So we're going to look at lighting for video, types of lights, color temperature, 3-point lighting, and then we'll demo this 3-point lighting just so everyone gets an idea of what does it mean, what does it look like, and how does it work. Now, 3-point lighting is really theoretical. It's a great starting point. But oftentimes lighting design really comes down to, how can you make something work? And you need to understand how, if you come to the table with an idea of how you're going to film a scene or film a location, and then you can work on lighting design. Because you can imagine if, we're filming in here, I have a light over here to the side, for example, that's shining on me to give me some exposure. But it wouldn't be, if I put this right in front of the camera, that light, that wouldn't be good. So this is the real basic essence, the principles of lighting design. Now, what I recommend to start, before we get even into any of the lighting ideas, is understanding a space. So there's something called a tech scout, or a technical a scout of a location. And the idea there is to look at what's there, what kind of lights exist, ceiling lights, what kind of practical lights. So the practical lights refer to anything that already is part of the space. So practical in terms of functioning lights. So there could be ceiling lights, there could be desk lamps, things like this. So you need to look at what's already there. Secondly, where are windows located and how do those work? So I'm in my studio here. I have like blackout curtains, so I don't have any sunlight coming in. But I could let sunlight in, and that can adjust things too. And we'll look at that today too. Now, that's important too. If you're in a space and it has really big windows, can you control those windows? Can you control the space? And if the answer is no, that's something to consider too. What time of day can you film there? And this is all part of lighting design. It's not just setting up lights, it's understanding the location. Then the next thing I highly recommend is taking any kind of a drawing tool. So for example, we work with Procreate for our digital arts workshops, taking something like that, and you can sketch out a lighting design and say, okay, this is what's available, take a photograph of the space, put out some information on what you might want to use there, and then decide where your lights can be. So if you're going to take these LED lights, let's say from our library partners, you're going to take 4 of them out. You want to understand, where do you want to place all 4 of them? And then based on that, do you where are electrical outlets, or can you use the batteries? And that's the great thing with these ones, is that if you don't have a lot of electrical outlets, instead of running electrical cables everywhere, you could run it on battery power. Now, what's really important is to make sure you charge the batteries, because it's in the library, in the different lockup rooms, and it could be a little bit colder in there, so the batteries could be depleted. So it's really important to ensure that we have 1 week loan periods on this equipment. Take it out, charge it, make sure they're fully charged, so that you can get easily 8 hours on these batteries, I find, if they're not full, like full power blast. Otherwise, you can also use the electrical adapter, and then you have that option as well. But if you're not near electrical outlets, you might want to use batteries, and you can definitely, on a full power, you can get 4 to 5 hours at least. So it's a pretty good day. And then if you have a break, let's say you are doing an 8-hour day, if you have a lunch break, make sure to charge them again. So these are just things to think about when we're getting into the lighting. Okay, so lighting for video. In digital video, this is, we've said this before, but what you see is what you get. So that digital monitor on the back of the camera is essentially letting you see what your image is, how the lighting is going to be. And there's no delay between exposure, film processing, like there was in the past. And you can use any type of light, but you want to make sure that you're not using lights that cause flicker. So again, the LED lights that we have through our library partners that you can take out, they're these newer 480, I believe is the model number, newer NL480. That is, and they're about 20 by 20 centimeters a square. Now, you want to make sure to use lights that don't have flicker. And what that means is sometimes a fluorescent light or like cheaper LED lights that are out there can have some flicker. And the flicker will basically pulsate on the screen. It'll be like a little bit of a flickering, and that could be something that you can't really fix in post-production. We talk a lot about, how can you fix some things in post-production? That would be something that you couldn't fix. So really important to ensure there isn't any flicker. And again, here's a note, some lights aren't designed for video and these will flicker. And video is always recording, so it requires what's called continuous lighting. So you can't use things like strobe lights and like photography strobes or flashes and things. You need what's called continuous lighting. So that's really important. So if you're coming from the photography background, you need to know that you need continuous lighting for video, because it's always on, right? So that's really important to remember. Okay, types of artificial lights for video. There's 4 main types of lights. So we have tungsten. These are based on the classic light bulbs. You have HMI, utilizes a unique bulb, and it creates a strong daylight. So these are really strong, powerful, punchy lights, they're called. And you'll see these sometimes on a big film set, lighting outside. They'll be with 20K HMIs, 20,000 watts equivalent, blasting through windows to create sunlight. Fluorescent lights, so you have these just use gas in a tube and it creates the light. And then you have the LED, and they use the LED diodes to create light. Now, out of all of these, the LEDs are probably the coolest in terms of heat. They're not creating any kind of heat. Fluorescent would be next in that. There might be a little bit of heat. HMI would be start to get very hot based on how much power is going through them. And tungsten is also less hot, very hot, maybe a little bit less hot than the HMIs. But the first two you definitely don't want to be handling with bare hands. So even a light bulb, a household light bulb, a tungsten one, traditional one that's not LED or fluorescent, it can be very, very hot. It can cause burning. So you want to have gloves or turn it off and wait for it to cool before you handle it. So really important to think about when you're handling things. So this is the same idea. We get onto a location, there's light bulbs, you're like, I'm going to take this light bulb out. If it's been on, let's say for days, it can be very, very hot. You can burn your hand. So make sure you turn it off, understand that it's cool, or have wear a glove. Some sort of a work glove can be sufficient to handle the hot bulb of a tungsten bulb. So make sure you do that. So that's really important. Okay, so again, flicker issues. Tungsten lights really don't have a flicker issue. They're just a big filament and it's burning. Fluorescent and HMI lights require a ballast, and that keeps things to not flicker. So that's really important. Again, if you're using fluorescent lights for filming, you need to make sure that they're film capable fluorescent lights. They're not flickering. HMI lights also have a big ballast, and that keeps it in sync, and that's pretty standard. The HMI lights will come with the ballast. It's not something that's an option. But fluorescent lights that aren't designed for filming can have a flicker. LED lights need to be designed to dim. So usually they have some sort of dimming. But this is important. If you put an LED light that's non-dimmable into, let's say, a lighting board in a theater space or something like that, it can start to flicker. So we want to make sure that we're not having any kind of that problem. But for example, this light, if I put it onto the battery mode here, I'll turn it on. Now I have a dimmer, so I can just dim it down and dim it up. And you'll see there's no flicker happening at all. So off, right? So no flicker. There's no kind of flicker happening from the light. And that's really important, is to ensure that we have lights that don't have that flicker, because again, you can't fix that in post-production. You're stuck with that. So important to test that. If you're going to a big theater space and it has a bunch of LED lights, make sure, bring the camera, and that could be part of the tech scout. Get some test footage. Always get some test footage of a location and make sure that everything works in there, that it's not causing any undesirable effects. There could be flickers and all sorts of lights that we're not aware of with our own eyes, but the camera will pick it up. And that's really important, to make sure that we don't have the flicker. Color temperature. This is the next big thing, and we talk about this a lot in the camera settings. So the color temperature is usually a setting that you put onto the camera, and it tends to be, usually we're working in two. There's 3200 or 5600. 3200 degrees refers to the tungsten setting, so it's a warmer light, and then daylight, which is sunlight, is actually cooler. So if you're shooting outside or with daylight balanced lights, we're at 5600 degrees. And otherwise, they're tungsten at 3200 degrees. And here's a great demo in terms of just, the light right now. So I have it totally on daylight, and I can flip it. These are changeable, and it basically goes to, it's called yellow, a yellow plus. And it makes it go into totally tungsten mode. So right now we're at 3200 degrees. So you're gonna see it warmer because that camera is balanced for 5600. And when I go back to the cool 5600, it's gonna look like a normal light. Now again, color temperature is really important. You can have mixed color temperatures, and we can do this on purpose. In the back, you'll see in the far back, I have a tungsten bulb that's 3200 degrees, but this light over here is daylight, and in case sunlight comes in, it's daylight as well. So you're looking at me and it's a pretty straight, normal looking skin tone. And in the back, it's very yellowish because it's 3200 degrees with the camera being set at 5600. So the color temperature, again, is really important in lighting design. You can have mixed color sources, but be aware that things will show up differently based on your camera settings. So that one's gonna be yellow. If it's tungsten based, that would be fine. And then the daylight lights would be blue in the tungsten setting. So it's always gonna change. But again, going back to that principle, what you see is what you get. So if you're not sure, am I using the right color temperatures? Am I using the right lights? So color temperature, flicker, everything, you're gonna see it in the monitor, just like you're watching me now. You're gonna see it on your camera, on the back of the camera, in the monitor. You'll see what's happening. If something's green, it's green. If something's warm, it's warm. If something's blue, it's blue. If something's flickering, it's flickering. All those things are happening. Sometimes the flicker might not show up on the monitor. So it's really important to record and play back. And then you might get some of those flicker issues showing up a little bit more. So again, really important to do that testing. Okay, so let's move on here. 3-point lighting. Now again, this is the essence. We're going to demo this and then look at more of the lighting design principles. But to continue on the lighting design, we always want to consider 3-point lighting is a classic way of lighting, and it works really well. And sometimes, if you're stuck, and you don't need to redesign everything and develop totally new concepts in lighting. You can get back to this. This is kind of a classic method. It will work, and we can play around with it to work on lighting a subject. And this could be lighting multiple subjects. But the idea here is that, and if you look at this principle, is that there's a key light, one main light in your lighting design, one main light. Then we have a fill light, a secondary light that puts a little bit of extra light. Because if I have one light, very similar to like what you see with me right now, I'm getting a lot of shadow here because there's a little bit of, bounce around in this room, but we're getting one light. And you can see the one light isn't always the best, but I do have some light in the background, right? So that's another kind of a light. But the one light is this one key light. This is a perfect example, one key light. I get a lot of shadows, and that's fine. I'm not worried about, having some perfect image right now. It's just for us to be able to present and talk. But that is the idea there. So one key light. With the fill light, what I would do is, if you see there's a lot of shadow here, right? So here I could put another light over here. It could be half of this key light, and it'll just fill in the shadows. So it'll look a little bit more natural, kind of what our eyes are used to seeing, because we can kind of see that difference in the shadows with our eyes and get kind of a balance. But the camera is not capable of doing that. Our eyesight's very different. So key light, fill light can fill in a little bit and help with the shadows. And then a backlight is a separation light. So again, way back in the back of the studio, I have that backlight. It could be just as simple as that, something that puts some light in the background. Generally, it'll also be more of a separation on a person. But in lighting design for an entire space, we might not have that luxury to have something that's always behind a person, but maybe that's something we can do in close-ups. So we have to think about moving from wide and then into close-ups. So this brings me to the next point. What's really important, three-point lighting could be really structured around a small space. But what we need to do is think about your widest shots first. So if you want this whole room filmed, we can't put lights up everywhere. We're gonna have to think about how can we light it. So we might just want to light it with practical lights, such as the one in the background. That desk lamp, we might just want to use windows. And then the windows and that become our lighting design. And maybe there's something by the camera to help with a little bit into the eyes, just what's called an eye light. So these are all the things to think about in lighting design. Now, what does that mean? It means that we start with the widest possible shot, and then as we get into close-ups of people or subjects or anything, we can start to manipulate the light a little bit more and add a little bit more accent and change it. But then there's another thing that's really crucial, is lighting continuity. And that means that the lighting doesn't totally change from one shot, a wide shot, to a close-up. All of a sudden it's super stylized, really dark, and the wide shot doesn't look like that. So lighting continuity is key. If we establish something in the wide shot, we want to continue that, have that continuity from the wide shot to closer shots and so on. So really important types of concepts to think about in that. So again, key light, fill light, backlight. That's your three-point lighting, and we've demoed it a few times. It's a great go-to, and then you can decide, hey, I'm only going to use one of these three. I'm only going to use two of these. Usually you'd use at least a key light and a fill light, or a key light and a backlight. Maybe you don't want a fill light. So that's the beauty of this three-point lighting, is you can start with three and you can end up with just one out of those three and work in those different ways. And soon, as you get more experience, you'll be like, you can set up one light that kind of does both things. You might be able to bounce off a wall or add a window light to help with that. So here's a nice little chart, three-point lighting diagram. Again, the key light, usually about 45 degrees to the sides of the people, and each side, and then there's a backlight that can be just behind the person, and the fill light is on another 45 degrees. So if you look at the key light here, there's some good percentages, and I think that's really good to note, is that the key light's 100%. So that's going to be the strongest light, essentially, in your lighting setup here. The next thing is there's going to be a fill light, and that's going to be 50% of that key light. And then the backlight might be 20%, and it's behind the person. Now, these are just suggestions, and it's not a rule. It's never a rule. These are just suggestions that you might want to start in this manner. And the key is with having the lights on the edge, on the 45 degrees and stuff, you're not putting lights into people's eyes. So that's really important. What if your subject has glasses? If you go in 45-degree angles, you won't see the person's glasses reflected with the lights. If you go light straight on, you're going to see that reflection. So that's why we like to light with 45 degrees, and then the backlight's another one. And then you don't see the lights. They're on the sides, and it can work really well. And you can see in this diagram too, another important thing is that those can represent window areas. So those kinds of sides. So if you put subjects and there's windows beside them, that could be a perfect way to have a fill light. And that can work really nicely. So, really, really great way. So let's have a look. Let's have a demo of this and just see kind of how how this can work. So I've set up a subject here that's just in the darkness, and what we're going to do is slowly craft some 3-point lighting on this subject. So what I'm going to do first is start with a key light. So this will be my brightest light, and you can see I'm just right over here. And so there you go. So 45 degrees, I'm going to put this, oops, that's on the tungsten side. So that will be my brightest light. And look how different that is from what it was before, right? So again, I think in this wide, we'll be able to see this a little bit better. So we got the subject here, 45 degrees right on here, okay? Now I'm going to look at putting a bit of a fill light here. So I have just another little battery powered LED. Okay. I'm going to turn that on. And now let's have a look at what that looks like in the actual camera. Okay, so you can see there's the fill light. So this is off. And you can see there's a lot of shadow right here. And that just, see, it could just be that little, just to fill in the shadow. And that's all we're talking about. It's like, so again, that key is really bright. And then a little bit of fill with this fill light here. And this is again about half, really minor. It's probably about 20% of the brightness of this light. And then here's again, if we flip off that key light, look how dark everything goes again. So not a great looking image, it's fine. But look what a difference is. Just once we start lighting things, it's beautiful. We got that kind of lighting there. Okay, so then the last thing we need to do is to get a backlight. So we're going to grab our light over here, and I'm going to just move it over, and we're going to put a bit of a backlight on our character. Just going to just get my power cable. Okay, got the lighting stand. We're going to do a bit of a backlight here. Make sure my camera's plugged in here. I don't want to run out of power. Perfect. Everything's going well. Okay, so, and then what we'll do is we'll look at, again, there's, what can we do with other sources, but here's how we can get to our backlight. So I'm just going to plug this light in here. We're going to get a backlight going. Okay, here we go. We're going to turn it on. Okay, so here we go. Backlight, on, off, on. You can see how it really helps to fill in a lot of light here on the back of the character. So that would be our 3-point lighting. Now it's kind of going into the camera, into the lens here. So we have to look at this kind of lens flare, but it's kind of neat. I like that as a lighting design idea, that maybe there is a little bit of that flare. And let's just rework this a bit. Maybe we don't have as much flare. Kind of neat. Again, just a little bit of, now what's cool about this light over here is it's giving us a little bit of backlight separation, but that's pretty neat. So that would be our 3-point lighting design, right? And what does that look like? This is what it looks like here. So we got our key light, got our fill light over here, and we got our backlight up here shining on the back. And that would be our essential lighting design, 3-point lighting. Now what we can do too is we can, look at using windows, things like windows, which can be really great as well. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to hop over here. I have a window here that's going to shine in a little bit. And it's a bit of an overcast day, but we actually got the sun like pointing right into us here. And so that can add a little bit. So now I got the sunlight coming from here, and you can see how I'm in a little bit of darkness, but that sun is helping out now, right? So that's kind of one idea there. I can also get in some sunlight from the side here, which is really can be effective. Right, so now there's a window here, a bit of sunlight here, and you can see it starts to help with this character as well. But we're using this as lighting. But think about those lights can also be the windows. And I think that's a really important idea. So now we can decide, okay, well maybe we don't want any of the fill light, or we want more fill light, or we don't want any. We can have the subject in more shadow, just like that. And that's the beauty of our lighting design, is first taking in the space and figuring out, what happens from there. And, what does that mean in terms of what's going on with the subject, how they're lit, how the space reacts. And again, you can see that practical light in the back, that bit of yellow shining on the desk. Those are really nice elements. And I think that's a big part of your lighting design, is figuring out what can you use in the existing space. So you can see that desk lamp way back there. It really adds in a little bit of nice light into the edge of the right frame. So that's a big part of our lighting design. So that's really, the essence of our lighting design, is just to think about, how we want to do it. Start with 3-point lighting, think about the space, look at the space technically, what's required. Again, this is my editing suite studio here, so there's a lot of computers, not necessarily the best space for lighting. It's not a lighting studio, but it just lets us get this kind of demo in. So for a smaller subject, that's great. But you can see this would be one of the technical requirements. So, okay, I have power here, but maybe there's not a lot of space in terms of to move around or a subject. But again, what happens if you need to light an editing suite, right? That could be the challenge. What do we do? I would use windows, see the existing light, where are my existing lights, overhead lights. All of that is really important in our technical scope. Then put down the lighting design onto paper, like we have the 3 lights up here. And now I know, okay, this is where the lighting is going to be within the room, and I'm ready to go. So I can do an interview with a person right there at a desk or standing, just in that kind of a setup. So that would be how we do our lighting design. The next thing is figure out what kind of equipment you need, right? So you're going to take out 2 LEDs, 3 or 4 from one of the libraries. You want to know what you need, and then you need lighting stands. So you want to put the LED lights, you need a lighting stand, and make sure you have enough. Charge them, put down a chart, and this is the essence of lighting. And then the color temperatures as well. So you're going to use existing practical lights like we have in the background there. That's a tungsten bulb. And is that okay? Do we mind having a little bit of warmth like that? To me, this looks really nice and warm and engaging. So I think that's a good lighting design. I don't think there's a negative about it. So that's really all the factors in determining and thinking about, how you're going to make it work and what works for you in terms of what your setup is. There aren't really wrong answers. It's just experimenting and moving lights around until you're happy with the situation and what your final lighting design will be. So that's really, the essence of lighting design, and how to do it for video production is to, start with 3-point lighting. Think about, do you need all 3? In this case, I'm just using 2 now at the end. I decided, okay, I don't really need the fill light. I like a little bit more shadow there. And again, these aren't rules. It's just a starting point, but you can see how important it is to have, definitely at a minimum, you need some sort of a key light, because without that, our subject was really dark and it wasn't a very aesthetically pleasing image when he's just in darkness, the subject. So think about all these aspects and parameters, and I hope that's helped to start, thinking and engaging and making sure you have your equipment, preparing the equipment, and preparing the space. I think that's super, super important. Take the time to go to the space, prepare it, understand what's in the space, what's available. Like I have windows here. I can open up 2 windows. It can help to light me again, so I'm not in total darkness. And those are all factors that are really important. Do you have windows in the space? Is it totally windowless? Are there huge windows and the sunlight might blast right into it? So right now this window, the sun is pointing through the window, but it's overcast. So otherwise it would be unbearable. That kind of a blast in here would be really, really bright and it wouldn't really work. So these are all the types of factors we need to think about in terms of our lighting design and effectively addressing things and making it work for our video production. I hope that's helped to give a great overview of what's available and how to use it and think of the tools. Make a lighting chart, like I said before, visit your location, lighting chart, where you're gonna place the lights, charge the batteries if you don't have electrical outlets there to use, and then be ready to film. So thanks again for joining us, everyone. This was the lighting design for video production. I want to thank all our partners. We have our library partners where you can access the LED lights, Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, Wasaga Beach Public Library, and the Canada Council for the Arts. Thanks again. You can rewatch this and we'll have these posted on our YouTube channel as well. www.tbmcs.ca for more information. I hope to see you at our next workshop too. All the best and take care.